And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another VFL Vantage. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, with the nuttiness that is the VFL men's and women's competition getting started, we're going to do a few more episodes of this just so that we make sure that Jonty, my co-host, Mr. Brendan Rhodes, does not have to look at 5 or more weeks of footy to try to go through it. So there are going to be a few more episodes of VFL Vantage this year just because we're going to make his life just the tiniest bit easier. Not that the internet is doing much of a favor here. Brandon, it's great to see you. Thankfully, hopefully, we've got these internet issues out of the way.
We've definitely got our fingers crossed, Donny. Great to be with you again. And yeah, it'll be, I suppose it's probably better for the listeners that they don't have to listen to me talk crap about 6 rounds of footy in one go.
Well, I don't mind it. It makes it a little bit easier for me to try to keep track of everything that has happened as well. So let's jump right into it, sir. Thoughts over the last 2 rounds of the men's and our first round of the AFLW of the VFLW.
Yeah, well, I think what we've got is a couple of clear standout teams. A couple of teams who I thought were going to go very well that are struggling at the moment, and and this is in the VFL, that is, and I reckon we've already seen a result that will be on the weekend, on the Easter weekend. I'll give you two. A result that um, certainly made a lot of people sit up and take notice about an emerging club,
Mhm.
and another one that will be almost impossible to beat for the upset of the season already, which was amazing to see, and it certainly makes a mess of my tips, that's for sure. But when tips are harder to do, then that means you've got a good competition.
Mhm.
So I'm very happy with that. And in the VFLW, well, I reckon we've got 2 or 3 clear standouts just from the one round of football.
Hmm. Yeah. So again, very, very early in the women's competition, but again, sometimes trends can be shown as quickly as one game for sure. So let's jump right into it. We will jump back to round three since we've already been through the first 2 rounds. Round three saw some interesting results. We go down to GMHBA Stadium as the Cats knock off the KC Demons by 16, 109 to 63. The Seagulls edge out the Dolphins in an all aquatic adventure, 71 to 16, 11-point win for the Seagulls there. The Tigers get a win in the Battle of the Big Cats, get a 22-point win over the Brisbane Lions, 85-63. Werribee with a shocker of a loss as they lose by 4 to Footscray, 78-74. The Suns with an absolute pounding of the Bullies, 164-39, a 125-point win. Southport get a nice win on the road at Icon Park against Carlton, 117-61. GWS with an impressive 108-point win over the Sandy Zebras, 151-43. North Melbourne get a win over the Sydney Swans by 49, 110-61. And Coburg gave it a mighty crack against Collingwood, but fall just a little bit short in an absolute shootout, 127-103. So this round, if you really look at it, some really big results. But I gotta say, this Werribee Footscray match had to be gutting for the Bees.
An absolute cracker of a game this one was. I got to watch the last quarter of it, and it was basically goal for goal, and especially in time on of the last quarter, it really looked like that either team was going to win on 2 or 3 occasions. I think Footscray got themselves a couple of goals in front early in the last quarter, and then Werribee came again, and a goal from Jake Lohman that levelled the scores at the 18-minute mark, sort of set things up for the grandstand finish. A couple of rush behinds, and then the Footscray captain Dan Orgel, I think, has kicked about maybe 13 goals in about 60 games. He stepped up and kicked one of the most amazing snaps that you'll want to see. Put the Bulldogs in front, and it looked like they were going to win. 24-minute mark. how you're going to stop a team that's got momentum and they've got a real boost from an amazing goal. Well, they went, well, the battle went on for about another 4 minutes, and then Miles McCluggage, the brother of
You.
the
Yeah.
Brisbane Lions superstar Hugh, stepped up in his and kicked a football from a set shot. 28 minutes gone in the last quarter. Werriby's back in front. Tigers are going to win. And then we get to the 31-minute mark, and there's a goalmouth scramble, a ball up at the top of the goal square. Somehow Cooper Hines, who is the number 20 draft pick, playing only his second game of football, he finds space where no one else could have found space, scrambled it, kicked a goal, put the Bulldogs back in front, and the siren went about 10 seconds after the centre bounce. So just an absolute classic between two terrific football teams. And I think what it showed is that regardless of where you see Werribee on the ladder right now and what happened to Footscray last week, both of these teams are going to be major players when it gets to the business end of the season.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. Let's jump to round four because I remember looking at this going, you've got to be kidding me because in this round we see three games come down to under a goal and four under 3 goals. Holy shnikes, what a round of footy. Let's jump right to it. And we start off with a bang as North Melbourne edge out Carlton by 2, 84-82. Then Tanabe outdone, almost a hold my beer moment. The Brisbane Lions find a way to get a 1 point win over the Collingwood Magpies at home at Brighton Homes Arena, 107-106. Coburg says, we're tired of this crap. We're going to kick the crap out of Williamstown and beat them by 51, 119-68. Frankston edge out the Richmond Tigers, 98-73, a 25-point win there. GWS continued their strong performance with a 53-point win over the KC Demons, 120-67. I'm going to skip the next one because I think this is the one that Brendan was talking about that put a few eyebrows a little higher than they normally are. We'll come back to that. Southport beat the Suns by 55, 111-56. Essendon survive a scare from Port Melbourne by 16, 71-55. The Box Hill Hawks with a strong performance over the Geelong Cats, 119-73, a 46-point win there. And the Zebras edge out the Footscray Bulldogs by 18, 89-71. But let's go back to it, sir. Blacktown Sports Park up in Sydney sees the upset of the round as the Swans, yes, the Swans, ladies and gentlemen, upset the Werribee Tigers by 2, 75-73. Was this the shocker of the round? Because even I went, what? The Swans knock off Werribee. I know Werribee hasn't been as strong this year to start off again. I think they're still progressing with so many losses from last year's team, but this one raised my eyebrows for sure.
Raised my eyebrows a little bit, yeah, but I will tell you it wasn't the one that I was talking about.
Okay.
Amazingly enough, but the Swans being a bit undermanned as we know at AFL level. There's 6 or 7 of the best side out at AFL level, which means that there's 6 or 7, and I think about 10 out of the best side at VFL level.
Mm-hmm.
So at quarter time, Werribee was in control of the game. They led 24-11, 4 straight to 1-5, and it was just going to be a regulation performance, even though Werribee's a young, developing side this year. They might be the reigning premiers, but they basically lost half their premiership team. So they're very young as well. But Sydney kicked, I think, from the start of the second quarter till about the 6-minute mark of the third quarter, Sydney kicked 8 goals and Werribee did not score. Didn't score, not even a single behind.
Yep.
And that was absolutely amazing. And the Swans got out by, I think, 38 points home like a good team does. And it was just a great effort by the Swans to hang on there in that game out at Blacktown. Yes, it was in Sydney, but it was out in Sydney. There was a little bit of rain around as well, and that is probably one of the best wins the Swans have had in the VFL in their 4 years in the VFL. So
The fun of international internet sometimes is that sometimes it can go absolute crap at the worst possible time. So as Jonty was saying, 8 goals for the Sydney Swans. But the funny thing is, while we were trying to get the internet figured out, he told me what the upset of the season is. So we're gonna jump right into that. Let's go, Brendan. Upset of the season because it was not one that I would have expected.
no, for me it was Sandringham versus Footscray. Straight up, the Bulldogs went into this game undefeated and in excellent form. Preliminary finalists last year, playing at home against a Sandringham team that was coming off a 108 point loss to GWS the week before. They'd made 12 changes to their selected team from that game, and to be honest with you, and with all due respect to the Zebras, I thought this was going to be probably the biggest margin of the round in favour of Footscray. And not only was that not the case, but Sandringham kicked 4 goals, 6 to 1-2 in the first quarter, and were never seriously challenged. It was an amazing result, and I was sitting there following it and thinking, how is this happening? It was a young fella by the name of Joey Campigli, who was playing only his third game of football at VFL level. He'd only kicked 1 goal in his career previous to this, and he came out and kicked 5. Outstanding performance from Joey Campigli, kicked 5 goals. They got a couple of guys back, young guys from St Kilda. Toby Travalia had a great day with a couple of goals as well. And Max Heath, who is an untried ruckman forward, basically put his hand up and said to Ross Lyon, "Get me in right now." 25 touches, I think 28 hit outs, 6 or 7 marks, kicked a goal as well. Third season at this level, maybe 22 actually. So still hasn't had a chance to play AFL footy, but on that particular form, get him in now and let him go. I don't think there's a lot of panic stations for Footscray, but that is a real red letter victory for Sandringham, who I had being in the bottom 2 at the start of the year, and they were coming
Yeah,
off
fantastic.
a really bad loss against a good opposition.
Yeah, no, it's you love seeing that when a team comes out of nowhere to do it. So since we're having fun and playing with house money as much as possible with the internet, let's jump over to the women's competition really quickly. Round 1 again, only one round through the VFLW. So North start off their
The
defense of their premiership very strong with a
other
48-point win. What's that?
one I would like to touch on, though, is the games that are really best to talk about. Have you still got me? That's the key.
Yep, I still
Have you
got you.
still
I
got
still
me?
got you.
That's the key. It doesn't seem like
You're popping
we're winning
in.
either here.
Yeah, you're
There we
popping
go.
in.
There we go.
Yes. Yes, we're back. We're back. We're back. Don't we love the internet?
Oh,
We are going to
unbelievable.
fight
Unbelievable. We're
through
back.
this.
We're back. Rightio.
We are going to fight through this
Rightio.
as
So
much as
I would
possible.
I would like to, Donny,
Go ahead.
while we're going, there's three other games that I really want to touch on in round 4, which we'll do quick. Actually, 4, because Good Friday was an unbelievable Good Friday. And we don't even really need to say too much about North Melbourne and Carlton, which was a 2-point win for the Kangaroos. It was brilliant. The Brisbane Lions were 7 points down at the 30-minute mark of the last quarter against Collingwood.
That was insane.
In that game. And insane. They won after the siren.
Yep. By
And
a
it was
point.
a behind after the final siren kicked by a point. Young man by the name of Fergus McFadgen, whose brother is a former Brisbane Lion and now a star in the Sandful, who I'm sure you've spoken about a fair bit, in Connor McFadgen. He kicked 5 goals in just his second game of VFL football, but he'll be remembered for the point he kicked from 55 metres out after the siren that gave the Lions that victory. So outstanding stuff. Coburg versus Williamstown. Coburg had not beaten Williamstown since July 20, 2008. 17 games in a row they'd lost to Williamstown. A couple of them heartbreakers, like last year, but for most parts, Williamstown have belted Coburg, and they've belted them over and over again. So at the 9-minute mark of the last quarter of this game, Coburg was in front by 78 points. And we were looking at Williamstown's biggest ever losing margin and lowest ever score against the Lions until Coburg ran out of it of steam, and Williamstown was able to put some respectability on the scoreboard with 7 goals. So the 51-point margin, definitely flattering for Williamstown. And they're the team that I had up near the top of the ladder that has some serious problems at the moment. They've got a long injury list, and losing games at home and losing them in that fashion, they're the one that really needs a big turnaround. They're the one that I'm worried about at the moment. Frankston and Richmond. Richmond was in front at three-quarter time in this game by 15 points, and Frankston kicked 7 goals to nothing in the last quarter. That was a 9-year drought. Frankston hadn't beaten Richmond since 2016. So that's a great way to finish a remarkable Good Friday. And then Saturday morning's game, which I got to call as well, GWS versus Casey, 66 at three-quarter time. Casey were barely even competitive at West team if they can stay fit at AFL and VFL level and keep their best players on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
My prediction of them to come, I think it was about 15th, is going to look extremely.
Okay, we are going to battle through this as much as the internet does not want us to get this done. We are going to get this done. So we've gotten through the men. Let's go to the women's now, Brendan, and see if hopefully Mother Internet will behave for us for just the littlest bit. So let's jump to the women's round one, as we were kind of saying off mic before we hopped on. Not exactly the most competitive round of footy. It is only round one, so we will kind of go through this kind of quickly. North Melbourne start off their defense of their premiership solidly with a 48-point win over Carlton, 65-17. The Sandringham Zebras, taking over for the Southern Saints, get a nice win over Darebin by 32, 53-21. The Box Hill Hawks looking strong again this year with a 58-point win to start off the season over the Cats, 88-30. Collingwood get a win over the KC Demons by 28, 47-19. Port Melbourne with a strong win over Essendon, 49-30, a 19-point win. And the one game under 4 goals, it happens to be the last one, is the Williamstown Seagulls start off their home and away with a solid 10-point win over the Western Bulldogs, 28-18. So looking at the scores, sir, not exactly a lot of competitive footy, but at least the last game gave us a little bit of competition.
Yes, it definitely did. What I got out of this is that North Melbourne Werribee, as they are known this year, they've gone into an alignment with Werribee that gets the Tigers into women's football and hopefully has the plan. But they are stronger than last year. They won the flag last year. They are much stronger this year. It's going to be an upset. Any team, Carlton, in Zebras, Guernsey, in women's football for the first quarter, and then I think 3 goals in about 6 minutes. A very good performance by Sam Ruck. Emily Fiedler did her knee in the FLW, so that's a real blow. Box Hill, easy win over Geelong, but a Max won 98-2. Cocky game against Casey, but they were a class above, and I think as it stands right now, with me?
We just caught up.
You with me, Donnie? How much of that did we get?
Most of it, I kind of paused it for a little bit and it got back in. So we're still actually on. I put us back on here. So yeah, we kind of
Right.
we kind of
So
it
we're on
got
the.
a word it got a word salad. So we're all the way to the Box Hill win. So
Yep. So yeah. So Box Hill by 58 points over Geelong. Very very impressive. But Geelong would be happy enough because this time last year they lost 98-2 to Box Hill. So that is an improvement for them.
mhm,
Collingwood and Casey was not an attractive game of football, but they have recruited very well. They look very, very strong, the Magpies. And I think at this stage, Collingwood and Box Hill are the two main challengers to North Melbourne. Very good win for Port Melbourne. That was one that I wasn't predicting. And the game against between the Western Bulldogs and Williamstown, which you said was the most competitive game, it definitely was. Um, it was at 3/4 time. It was 2 goals to 1 in favour of the Bulldogs, and yeah, Williamstown managed to stand up in the last quarter and kick 3 goals to come from a goal down
mhm,
to get up and win that game. Which those two teams play much better football than they played in that game. So it's going to be an exciting competition, but North Melbourne Werribee are definitely the team to beat once again.
mhm. Yeah, that's great. So we've gotten through that. We'll fight through this internet. We'll fight through this internet fun that it is. So we'll get to the burning questions. We'll try to do it again. We are doing everything that we can to try to make sure we get this podcast out. So please forgive us if there's a few stoppages during this and a few nutty moments in this podcast. We are doing our best. So let's all right. So let's move to it. We've gotten through all of the games that have been played so far. Let's move to the burning questions. Let's start. We'll go with the ladies first since it's a little bit shorter. We've only gotten through one round, Brendan. Can we take much out of this, or are we still kind of will we be throwing darts blindly here?
There is a little bit of the throwing darts side of things, but I think we did see enough to know that the reigning premiers, North Melbourne Werribee, as they're now known, are probably the best team, and they're probably going to be very very hard to beat. I know they were about 11th on the ladder or something at about round 7 last year before flying home. I don't think that's going to happen this year. They were very impressive in cleaning up Carlton last Friday. So they are clearly the team to beat. They're stronger than last year, and I think any team that beats them um, would be very, very close to winning the premiership. Sandringham, the new look Zebras, former Southern Saints, finished 11th last year. They look like they've recruited very well. They've got the new Guernsey, the new nickname with all the tradition of Sandringham. They started very very strongly as well. So I expect them to have a good year. But the two major threats for me to North Melbourne Werribee are going to be Box Hill and Collingwood. I think Collingwood um, recruiting a lot of terrific players straight off AFL lists, and Box Hill, well, they're just always strong. It's men and women. They just know how to run a great club, so they're going to be around the mark. And so there, I reckon the four teams to really keep an eye on. But I'm certainly not writing off Port Melbourne, Essendon, Bulldogs, or Williamstown by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, no, it's still too early, and injury could really play a havoc on any team. So I'm 100% with you. So I'm gonna have a little bit of fun. I know you're a New South Walesman, but you cover the VFL. How up and about is the VFL W? Because they went over and surprisingly shocked a few people, despite the talent level. Getting a big win during gather round against the Sanford W representatives. I know I kept track of it. It was a fascinating game. Again, the talent level was insane. I think women's footy is only growing by leaps and bounds. But I mean, how up and about are you as covering these competitions, the VFL and the VFLW, that the VFLW goes over and gets a huge win on the road?
I think the VFLW first time playing. Yeah, they certainly did. I think they just went out there with nothing to lose. That was the key thing for me is that they'd never played a representative game before, And yeah, they were taking a season. I said by season they played a game last year and had a good win over Western Australia, but there was a very strong Victorian team that went over there, and they were ready, and they ambushed South Australia in the first quarter, kicked I think 4 goals to nothing before South Australia could even blink, and there was just no coming back from there, as there rarely is at any level of women's footy. Once you get a lead, it's very hard to run it down. Um, to the credit of the VFL, they had complete buy-in. The best players, the best non-AFL listed players across the whole competition, all put their hands up. They all went over there. They all wanted to play, and they got the result. And whether it was an upset, whether it was an ambush or whatever, we don't really know, because
Mm-hmm.
the VFLW has never played before.
Yep.
The big thing will be to see how South Australia goes when they play Western Australia later on this year for comparison, and then whether the Big V can back it up next year. But it was a fantastic result for everyone involved here in Victoria, and that might be why we're having some issues with our internet. We're in the South Australians might not be too happy with it. They might be sabotaging us.
Well, I will tell you this is that there was some confidence, almost some cockiness, a little bit of the essay, and I will even raise my hand. I looked at I really the Sample W is a competition I'm really invested in. It's been so much fun to watch them, and I think that there is a little bit of naivete, a little bit for me when it comes to the VFLW girls, because I pay attention to the competition, but the investment isn't the same. So I will, like I said, mea culpa, raise my hand. I was not expecting that result again. Maybe I
Fully
even
understand.
I even I even say a little bit too is maybe a little bit of fatigue over the first 4 rounds for the Sample W. Maybe threw them off a little bit. I don't know, but again, my hat tip to the VFLW. Those girls were fantastic. It was an incredible game of footy. But representative footy is fantastic. I absolutely love it. I know
Love it.
there's talk in the AFL competition of state of origin, which I think would be fantastic. Overall, it's just figuring out how they're going to do it will be the fun part. So let's jump over to the men. There are three unbeaten teams after round four. Again, the competition is very wonky. So some teams have played three, some teams have played four, yada yada yada. Is there a team you have enjoyed watching of those three that you sit there and go, this is a team we need to keep an eye on?
All of them. All of them. They all look very, very good. I had, as you know, I had Southport and Box Hill
Hmm.
Hawks in the top three at the start of the year. I really expected them to have great years again, and sure enough, they're off to terrific starts. For me, the surprise packet is GWS. Not through any lack of the talent that they've got, but just through I downgraded them based solely on the results that they've produced in previous years with similar levels of talent. They have a very fit list at the moment across the AFL and the VFL. I've often said that the strength of your VFL team doesn't come from the AFL players; it comes from the VFL players. And that's the same in any league you go to. The top half a dozen players in pretty much any team in any comp are good players. It's the bottom six that is where you win your premierships. And GWS at the moment, because they're going so well, because they're so healthy, their young kids on that AFL list are the ones that are driving it, and they've got these young key forwards that can't get a look in at AFL level because of Jesse Hogan and Jake Stringer and Aaron Cadman. You're talking Max Grasevsky, we're talking Nathan Wardius, who have kicked I think 29 or 30 goals between them across the first three games. Grasevsky kicked 5 against Casey in 3 quarters last week. Wardius kicked 4. He kicked 8 the week before. Um, they just have goal kickers on every line,
Hmm.
and they've got their young draftees from last year, Cody Angove, Harrison Oliver, both were fantastic against the Demons last week. A game that I saw, uh, I could not have been more impressed with what the Giants served up in that game against Casey. The big test for them will come this week in Sydney against a Footscray team who I did rate as a major player and who will be on the rebound after a stinker against Sandringham last week. If they can deal with Footscray, then they will definitely announce themselves as the real deal.
Yeah, definitely fantastic. 100%. They have picked their type and they are staying to it. And I appreciate that Adam Kingsley and the GWS list management staff, they know what they want. They're picking that and they're staying with that. It's fantastic. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see. Again, I've seen teams before at the early part of the year. They're healthy, they're healthy, they're healthy. And then injuries hit them halfway through the season. So GWS is going to be a watch for sure. So let's
The
kind of,
depth is going to be an issue. The depth is going to
exactly.
be the issue. As I said, with the VFL list is academy kids. So that's where they'll find a problem if they lose a few guys off their AFL list.
Yep. No, no, 100%. So we'll go a little bit negative here, and I try not to, but we'll go here. Werribee are 1-3 through the first four games. Are there any concerns that the Bees are finals chances are slimming by the round?
Not yet. Not yet. I've still got the faith in Werribee. The three games they've lost were by 3 goals to Southport, who are probably then they lost by 4 points to Footscray when they were in front at the 30-minute mark of the last quarter. They had a very ordinary 2 quarters through the middle against the Swans, but they charged home. They lost by 2 points again interstate. You can't underestimate. They've got a good record doing it, but you can't underestimate how hard it is for a standalone club to go interstate when they just don't do it very often. So while that was an upset in favour of the Swans, it's not as big an upset as it would have been if it was done down here in Melbourne. So I've still got the faith in Werribee. We'll find out a lot this Friday when they take on Williamstown in the traditional Anzac Day game, because the Seagulls are one of the teams I do have concerns about right now.
Will definitely be interesting for sure. And then we'll end like we did with the women. Let's talk about the state league because the VFL got to be puffing up their chests because both the women and the men go over to South Australia, get a win on road soil. It is fantastic. So we will end there and we will move on. We will go to the last question. And just like the women, the VFL find a way to go over to South Australia and get a huge win on the men's side as well. So I got to ask this, how up and about are you? Again, I know a New South Walesman, you cover the VFL, but how up and about is it? The league goes over, they go 2 for 2 in representative footy.
To be honest with you, I never ever thought that I would find myself barracking for the Big V. here in state footy, being a passionate wearer of the sky blue Waratah, and would absolutely love to see the New South Wales side back running around again. But yes, I am definitely extremely proud. The chest is puffed out about this performance, especially when I heard that the VFL was paying some sort of astronomical odds to win the game, which would have been based solely on previous results,
Hmm.
and the fact that the VFL hadn't beaten the Sandful for 23 years. Um, that 23 years is about, I think, 6 or 7 matches, which
Yeah.
is a significant sample size and over a long period of time. But it's not like it was 20 in a row or something like that.
Hmm.
Again, I'm not downgrading South Australia's achievement in doing that, but the people who were making the odds and making the tips obviously did not really look at the VFL team that was going over there, and with no disrespect to the Sandful, who had a very strong team also, there were 15 players formerly on AFL lists in the Victorian side, and if I scan it through very quickly, looking at it here in front of me, there's one, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of 8 of those who were actually on an AFL list last season, as recently as last season. So it certainly didn't surprise me that Victoria was able to go over there and put on put on a show and yeah, get the job done. Um, and as I said, if I was allowed to gamble responsibly, I certainly would have had a little bit on them.
That is awesome. That is awesome. No, it was interesting seeing the results and then going back and watching it again. Fantastic footy. I love the representative, as we kind of said with the women. It's I hope, I really do hope that the AFL can find a way to play some sort of representative footy, because I think it'd be fantastic. I think the product would be amazing. It's the question is, how do they split it up? Do they split it up? Victoria, Victoria, SA, WA, and allies, or do they go full on and they go the all six states with buys or whatever, or do like an indigenous all-star team, like something in between? It'd be interesting. But yeah, so I love it would be fantastic to
I
see
love it.
representative footy,
Adore
but
representative.
yeah, we'll really have to see. It'd be
Yeah,
fantastic.
but
I know talking
yeah,
rugby
I
league.
would
I know talk.
definitely prefer to
Go ahead.
see.
Go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, I would definitely prefer to see the sky blue Guernsey, the big Q, the map of Tassie, the brown and white vertical stripes of the Northern Territory. I want to see those teams play. They might
Mhm.
not play against Victoria, South Australia, or WA. It might be the same as the under 18 championships are, where they have their own matches, and then they potentially put an allo side together out of that.
Mhm.
Or you could have the Indigenous All Stars as the fourth team at that level. Ways to do it. You could even look like there are a lot to, but there are a lot of people that think beat South Australia or Western Australia by 20 goals.
Mhm.
People have said that in the past as well,
Mhm.
and they've had their pants pulled down regularly because of
Mhm.
the passion that is engendered in this in state of origin footy.
Yeah.
If you're really worried about that, we'll do it the same as the under 18s and make it Vic Metro and Vic Country and see how it goes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that actually may give you eight. That may give you eight sides if you do it that way too. So I 100% agree. So fantastic. So before the internet decides to crap out on us, like it seems to do sometimes, the longer we go, let's go straight to tipping. We'll start with the men. We'll start with the women, and then we'll go to the men. So we'll go to round two of the women really quickly, sir. North Melbourne, Werribee, host Williamstown, and Arden Street Oval. Roos, Seagulls. Who do you like?
Yeah, I won't be picking against the Roos all season, I don't think. So Williamstown will be somewhere around the mark. They'll be competitive, but I think the Kangaroos will win.
Ruse for me. I'm 100% with you. Like I said, hoping for a competitive game, but the Roos are so strong, very tough there. Let's go to the Whitten Oval as the Western Bulldogs take on the Darabin Falcons. This is one of those head versus heart ones. I want to tip Darabin so bad, but I think I'm going to tip the doggies in this one. But like I said, hoping for another competitive game in this one. Who do you like?
Very interesting contest, this one. Question marks over the Bulldogs because they weren't able to finish the game off last week, and they did struggle to score. They only kicked 2 goals. Darabin lost convincingly, but still managed to kick 3 goals. So, and they do have the best goal. They do have the reigning Bulldogs last year. So, I'm not ruling the Falcons out from having a chance, but you've got to pick the Bulldogs at home.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one. Let's go to Windy Hill as the Essendon Bombers host the Collingwood Magpies. A fascinating one right here. Who do you like in this one?
This is a real flip of the coin game, despite what I said a little bit earlier on. Essendon coming off a loss, they don't lose strings of matches too often. So they're going to be very hard to beat. I think Collingwood won easily against Casey. I think they can play a lot better than that. I don't think it was the best of games. I'm going to tip. I'm going to tip. I think Collingwood, but that's one that I reserve judgment until the teams come out.
100% with you on that one. I'll tip the pies, but again, I like it'll be interesting. That'll be a fun one there. Down to Deakin University in Geelong as the Cats host the Blues in this one. Technically bottom of the table matchup here. I'll go with the cat. I'll go with the cats. I'll stay with my hometown theme, except for the Essendon game. So I got the cats.
Yeah, can't see either team competing for the finals at this stage. I'd love I'd love to see Geelong present an early win to their young coaching staff. They've got a 22-year-old coach this year in Taylor Hassett and a 20-year-old captain in Mel Staunton, which is really brave from the club to put their faith in the youth. And
Mhm.
I'd love to see them get rewarded early on. Um, Surprisingly, they don't have a very good record at home, Geelong. So that's something to think about too. But no, I'll go for the Cats. I'll go for the Cats. Flip of the coin.
I talked you in that one. All right, we'll go to
You did
RSEA.
talk me into that one.
Let's go to RSEA Park as the Sandy Zebras take on the Demons. I always have to stop myself because I want to say Sandy Dragons, and I'm like, that's the NAB team. And I stopped myself that
Well,
time.
we receive our umpires appointments over the past couple of weeks, and the umpires are actually calling them the Sandringham Dragons as well. So you're not on your own with that one.
Well, good to hear.
No,
Good to
I'm
hear.
going for Sandringham in this one. They look like they're up and about at the moment,
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna
and
say
I,
the
yeah,
same
I think
thing.
I think the I think the Zebs might be a bit too strong for Casey.
Yep, just a little too strong. Zebras for me on this one, and a cracking game at Recreation Reserve as Box Hill take on Port Melbourne. The Borough here on this one, interesting one. Take Box Hill in this one, but this I think this could be a cracking game of football.
This one's the match of the round for mine, and it's down in Wonthaggi, the annual Box Hill's annual trip down to the country, down to Gippsland.
Mhm,
And interestingly enough, out after them for the first time. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds out in the country when they're obviously used to the senior men's game being the main event on the day. So it could work. I hope it does work, but time will tell on that. With the men's match starting at 11 a.m., it'll be something that's extremely foreign to Gippslanders, and no disrespect to them.
mhm.
Um, I've got to pick the Hawks to win. If they're going to be in the top three for me, they've got to be winning this. But it certainly wouldn't surprise me for the Borough to get up.
Hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting. So we'll jump over to the men's. Like I said, we're fighting the internet as much as possible here. So again, we'll jump to it. The pre Anzac Day the Anzac Day Eve game, as it's known in the AFL, as Richmond take on the KC Demons on Wednesday afternoon, if I see that my time correctly. Tigers.
Wednesday
Oh
morning, I
yes,
believe.
morning. I forgot. You holy crappy-oly. I
Yeah.
am not envious of these players. Richmond, Casey, who do you like?
Oh, interesting one for Richmond. They've actually lost a couple of players, including the acting captain, who is unavailable to play at 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning, which it's a really weird time slot. I know they had to play it out at Casey rather than at Punt Road Oval where they normally go. That's next door to the MCG. Casey is about an hour and a quarter's drive away, so that's why the game's got to be earlier. Punt Road about to be redeveloped, so there's no games there, any more games there this year. On form, you've got to back Richmond. Is back in the team this week. His first year, so good luck to him. Hopefully, he has a good day, and I think Richmond wins the game.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Richmond. I'm gonna go Richmond on this one. But again, Casey Field's always an interesting adventure when it comes to it. A fascinating one at Kinetic Stadium down in Frankston as the Dolphins host the Bullies. The Northern Bullets come to town. I got the Dolphins in this one, but hopefully for a competitive match.
Yeah, a couple of bad losses for these teams. Frankston will be without their star Adelaide Crows recruit Will Hamill, who has a tight hamstring. They believe it'll only be 1 week. But Bailey Lambert has a long term ankle injury, so that's a major blow for them. For the Bull Ants, their most exciting young talent is Will Elliott. Problem, I think a huge crowd down at Frankston on a Thursday night before the long weekend. It's very hard to see the Dolphins losing.
Yeah, very much way. In very a fascinating one for me here. Avalon Airport Oval as the Werribee Tigers host the Seagulls in this one. Who do you like in this one?
It's almost desperation stations. I know I said I'm not worried about Werribee just yet, but if they were to lose a second consecutive home game, it would be potentially time to start thinking. Well, they're going to get more players back as the season goes on. They've got a few out. Williamstown have a long injury list as well. Don't get me wrong, but the Seagulls have a horror draw over the next month. If they drop this, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they could find themselves 1-5 or 1-6 and their season will be basically over. So everything riding on this, probably for both teams. It's probably a little bit more desperate for Williamstown, but
Mm-hmm.
from what I saw last week from Williamstown, I couldn't tip them to beat anybody. And that's the harshest thing you could ever say about a Williamstown team.
Mm-hmm.
They will come out breathing fire. It may not be quite enough against a team like Werribee.
Yeah, gonna take the Tigers and the Tigers at home. Backs against the wall, big time one. But again, Seagulls, they got just as much to play for. It'll be fascinating. It'll be a fascinating one on that one. The Sandy Zebras at RSEA Park host the Brisbane Lions. Brisbane a little bit shakier than normal, so it'd be interesting on this one. Gonna take the Lions. I know sometimes leaving the lovelihood that is Queensland for them sometimes can give them a few issues, but I think the Brisbane Lions just a little bit too strong.
Stunning victory by Sandringham. Stunning victory by Sandringham last week, as we touched on a little bit earlier. Lions were down in Melbourne. They were badly beaten by Richmond a couple of weeks ago, which was an upset as well. All things being equal, you would expect Brisbane to win, and I do expect Brisbane to win. But the big question is, can Sandringham back up what they did last week? But the Lions should be too good.
Yeah, no, 100% with you on this one. ETU Stadium in Melbourne sees Essendon v Collingwood, the Anzac Day match via VFL side. Fascinating one on this one. Who do you like in this?
Then coming off a good win on this ground last week against Port Melbourne.
Keep going.
Yeah, no idea about this one. It's a very Essendon coming off off a good win over Port Melbourne.
All right, so internet be damned. Holy crap. So we are actually just going to do this really quickly. Brendan's going to put up his tips for the last 5 games really, really quickly. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to talk too much because we don't want to fight this freaking internet anymore. So that is going to do it for this episode of the VFL Vantage. Again, keep track on more footy coverage very, very soon. As we said, Essendon over Collingwood, Gold Coast over Sydney, Box Hill over, and we'll move on from there. Thank you, Brendan. Again, we'll do this really quickly. Thank you so much again for all that you do on this podcast. Again, making sure Geelong over Carlton, GWS over Footscray, and Box Hill over Port Melbourne. There we go. All of the games tipped. We got through it, sir. We fought through the internet. Thank you again so much for everything that you do when it comes to the VFL coverage. It's always fun talking with you, despite the internet issues.
And the same to you, Donnie. I'm glad we got there eventually.
It took 2.5.
We'll hopefully have more luck next time.
Hopefully, very much. So that is going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. If you like what you're listening to, please like and subscribe. And we'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.